helpful on parent advisory boards like CPAC, which you'll hear about in a moment from our guest speaker, and how a board like CPAC can contribute to the health of a district and a community. So our goal tonight is to give you some practical insights and a clear understanding of rights, but then also to give you plenty of space to ask questions. We also have Spanish interpretation available this evening from Natalie Vincencio, who is interpreting for us, and we have headsets in the back. Si necesita interpretación en español, por favor, acérquese al frente ahora para recibir ayuda o levante la mano y alguien irá hacia usted. So here's how things will unfold tonight. We're going to hear from two community leaders who have been critical for this night to happen. And then we will have our guest speaker, Leslie, share expertise and insights for about 45 minutes. And after that, we'll open up to your questions. So feel free to jot things down as you listen. Just a couple of ground rules. Please keep your questions concise as possible. And for the privacy and safety of our families and children, when you're asking a question, please keep in mind that you're not sharing any identifying family details because we are recording this session. And we're here to learn together and not to discuss the individual cases. But now, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Holyoke paraprofessional Veronica Santana. This was her dream, to bring this type of education to our community, and I'm so proud to have been able to work with her to get this off the ground. Veronica?
Hello, everybody. If you can't see me, it's because I'm only 5 feet tall. I am Veronica Santana. I actually grew up in Holyoke, and I came back about 5 years ago and started working in this district. And what I found was a frustrating divide between our school community and our actual community with the understanding of what an IEP really is and what it can do for our students and what accommodations can be brought forward and what other things can be helped for the student. And I'm super happy that we have the opportunity now to actually educate all of our parents here. And I'm really, truly invigorated in helping the community understand that this is not, an IEP is not saying that your child can't do something. It's saying that we are going to find a way so that your child can meet the standard and your child can actually succeed just like every other student, and they learn differently. It's not that there's something wrong with them. It's not that there's something that they cannot do. It is literally that they learn differently, and we need to accommodate that, and we need to understand that, and we need to respect and make them feel good about who they are. So I'm super happy that now we have people that are coming here to educate you and to help you understand that this is a great way for all of the community members to feel like we are a family and we can have our children succeed in the future. So I'll give it back to, thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. Now I'd also like to hand the mic over to another special guest, which is Lynn Horan, who is the chair of Holyoke's Commission on Disabilities. She has been an integral partner in bringing accessibility, equity, and inclusion to our community at large, and we are so pleased to have her partnership. Lynn?
Good evening. Thanks for those of you who came out this evening and to those of you who will be listening in this recording, hopefully in the future, because that is what we're talking about, is the support of community tonight, and that means everybody, particularly for these particular kids who are as individual as every other child, and individual in their disabilities as well. But all kids benefit from an education, every single one of them. And not just to become independent, not just to find work, but to develop who they are and a sense of humanity and the ability to accept and enjoy living in community. So my name is Lynn Horan. I'm glad to be invited here tonight and part of this, and I understand that we hope to have these kind of meetings continue, which I will definitely be interested in contributing to as well. So, as you can see, for me, I am also disabled myself. So I'm not just chair currently of the Holyoke Commission on Disability, but I myself have been living with disability for 40 years. So it is something I live every day. I was 27 when it started, multiple sclerosis and RA in this case for me. But knowing in my disabled community many who were born with disabilities, and again, we are, as adults and children, as diverse a group as you will ever find, which should be our superpower. And we are, by the way, the most diverse in terms of race, in terms of LGBTQ folks, also have a higher chance of becoming disabled, usually due to discrimination, not because of something biological. Same for Indigenous Americans. And more women. So that, again, should be our superpower, because with that comes great cultural variances and perspectives. Unfortunately, the world, and that's kind of what we're here tonight to talk about too, our biggest obstacles, as big as they can be with disabilities of all type, are really the lack of society in terms of making the world accessible to us so that we can use all the many abilities we have. And that starts in childhood. And so because this issue, again, is so important, particularly for kids, to be accepted in their society, to get the education, as I've said, for the reasons I've said. In our Commission on Disability, we recently got our first-time budget, first time for the Commission on Disability. It comes actually not from taxes, but from fines on violations for handicap parking violators. And it's totally because of the ADA law that protects us. Maybe not dissimilar from what we're doing in education with the IEPs, that there are laws and rules set there not to make everybody's life difficult, but actually to make everybody in the community's life fuller, because they will be when they include us as well. And so, again, we thought about the issues coming up. We knew that what we're facing in this country right now is not politics. It's not partisanship. There has been a tremendous gutting of staffing and funds for the very things that help people like myself become and stay independent and become part of community however they wish or can become part of community. And they've done that by impacting healthcare, Medicare, Medicaid, and we all know they certainly have tried very hard to diminish our departments of education and special education. Children, yep. That's pretty bad. So we knew that coming into this year, that there were going to be even bigger problems, exaggerated even worse, and definitely for kids. So one of the categories in our budget that we put in was to contribute to the programs that reinforce disabled students. And we're hoping, and I'll be doing more investigating, so you can contact me at, go to the Holyoke City, holyoke.org city site, and you will see under committees, commissions, and boards, the Holyoke Disability Commission, and you'll see my email. You can contact us through that and let us know what your opinion is. But we are looking, hopefully, to help kids get assistive devices, for instance, if they need them, to help teacher aid programs in classrooms, but we're also looking for suggestions in how we can help. And if we're fortunate, we will keep this, we hope, keep this budget year to year. So this is a program that our commission can continue to do, because if there's anything these kids need too, and by the way, the teachers, the administrators, and the other community members that support them, it is consistency. So we're hoping for that, and I really appreciate you giving me an opportunity to tell you a little bit about what we're doing. And the last thing I'll say is, if there's anything I've learned, again, out in the world, again, the biggest obstacles, even as someone with 40 years of dealing with this, and as an adult still faces, is the lack of accessibility, not just in terms of ADA, but it is our job, I believe, to open up this last glass ceiling once and for all, that we can be part of society. Everybody benefits from it, but it doesn't stop at ADA. It has to be an ethic of inclusion. So thanks very much for this opportunity, and I really look forward to hearing the other folks here tonight talk about the IEP programs. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Veronica and Lynn, for those important reminders and about our community and partnership. So I'm really pleased to introduce our guest speaker tonight, Leslie. Leslie is a dedicated advocate for families of children with disabilities and the project director at the Federation for Children with Special Needs in Massachusetts. Leslie is an attorney and was a founder of her local special education parent advisory council, and she brings deep expertise in special education advocacy, family engagement, and collaborative leadership with school districts from around the Commonwealth. Leslie's going to speak, as I said, for about 45 minutes, and then we're going to open up to questions, but I'm so pleased to welcome Leslie to the stage.
Thank you for the invitation to join you tonight. Thank you for everyone who came out in the cold rain this evening. And it's just wonderful to be here. It's wonderful to meet Lynn. I'm a new member of my town's Disability Commission, so we're all learning as we go along. A little bit about me. I am an attorney, and I had a working background, but I think the expertise I bring to this work is that I'm a parent. I had 2 sons go through public school on IEPs, 2 different disability types, 2 different journeys, and even with my higher level of expertise, say in the law, having a parent who was an elementary school teacher with her master's in special education, it was still a difficult journey. And there's a lot to learn along the way. And so I'm really excited to be here. I work for an organization that supports both sides of the table, both the educators and administrators and the families and the students, to come together to work for better outcomes for all students. And that's why I'm excited to be here. So I've put together a presentation which kind of blends 2 thought processes and 2 things I work with. And it's kind of 2 pathways for a parent. When you think about it, a parent would advocate for their own child. That's more like individual advocacy. But the parents also have opportunities now to participate in different types of groups, advisory councils, both the Special Education Parent Advisory Council and the English Language Parent Advisory Council, to help the school district look at systemic issues, so that individual versus systems. And parents, I think, can probably, get a lot out of both kinds of ways of advocating and just making all those connections. And I think that's the other thing that helped me along the way, was other parents. how important it was to make those connections for emotional support, for access to resources, for tips along the way, how I benefited from parents. And that's why I do this work. So let's see if I can make this all work. And yes, my name is Leslie. Leslie. I married a guy named Leslie. But I'm a easy name to remember. The Federation just drafted a new mission and aspiration statement, and I'm just sharing it with you because it's really about empowerment. It's having the information so that you can be part of this whole system. We want to empower families, engage these wonderful, diverse communities and all those resources that are out there to try to eliminate barriers. We want to improve life outcomes for all students, and especially those with disabilities. Together, we want to build that inclusive world. I'm not giving up on my dream. I've been doing this for a while, where every child and every young adult can experience belonging and participate equitably in life's opportunities. And I think once we work together, I think we can move the needle forward. There's lots of work to be done. I put out this OSEP, which is the Office of Special Education Programs at our federal government. They have a little logo here of the 50 years fast facts. Our federal law, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, actually came out of the Massachusetts law. Massachusetts was the first in the nation to have an all-inclusive special education law, and that law was used as the model for our federal law. And it's just celebrating 50 years old this November. And so within my lifetime, I have seen the right of all students to be educated in public school and have access to our curriculum. So it seems like, oh, it's been a long time, but it really hasn't, and we're still working on it. Tonight, I'm going to talk about those two approaches for you to understand your rights and responsibilities as a parent under special ed law, but also how you can learn to serve as an advisor to your school district. And this, I think, is that power that parents have to help things work better. We spend a lot of money on education, especially on special education. And I think the decision makers should know what's working and what's not working. And the parents have that experience, have that lived knowledge, and can bring that forward and work to make change. Is change fast? No. It's hard. It's slow. But I think we have structures in place. And so I just want to introduce you to some of those. And look at this chart here from 1976 when I graduated high school. We've gone from over 3.6 million students to over 8.3 million students with disabilities. So the population is growing, and I think we as communities have to react. So what can you do as a family? I think all families should just stay in touch with their child and how they're learning and growing. Try to recognize some signs or behaviors. And that might mean you might have to learn a little bit about developmental milestones. And I didn't even know there were developmental milestones when I was raising my kids. You have all those books and everything, but it's hard to follow everything. But you might start to see some behaviors, some challenges, some issues. Talk to your child, especially if they're verbal, and talk to them about how things are going for them. And if you have any concerns, share them. Talk to your pediatrician, your doctor, school, neighbors, religious leaders. Don't not reach out for help. And I think that's, where we all can help others and share. I always felt the public librarian was our best helper, because we'd have our brochures on their table and they'd say, gee, you might want to learn about this organization and attend one of those meetings. So wherever students are, wherever families are, local Boys and Girls Club, make those connections so that you're spreading the word that there is help, there is information out there. Also, the law requires the schools to look for, find, and evaluate children who may need special education. It's called Child Find. They probably put an ad in the local paper, but who reads the local paper? It's just getting the word out that there is that requirement for schools to find these kids and to get them the services that they might need. If you're advocating for your own child, you are laying that foundation for all children and helping all families, especially a lot of newcomer families. When you think of families that are coming to the United States, may not understand the U.S. system. And so even if they've been here for a while, it's just a change. And so I think it's our duty as citizens to let them know how the system works and how to navigate that system. I think that's just a nice gift that we can give to one another. So tonight I'm going to we have hour-long workshops at the Federation, so you can all attend them. They're virtual, they're online. But tonight I was just going to do a snapshot of, like, what are your basic rights? And they come from the law. I mean, that's why I love the law. And there are 6 principles under IDEA that really give you your rights in this process of special education. So the first one, and we have lots of acronyms, and I'll try to, if I misspeak and say an acronym, just call me on it and say, what does that mean? So the first one is that everyone in public schools who are eligible has the opportunity for a free and appropriate public education. We call it FAPE. And I think that's the other thing we all have to learn as parents, is all of these terms. So you don't have to pay for it, and it should be appropriate for your child. The way it's appropriate is they do an evaluation. And you have to consent to that as a parent, and you'll get an evaluation in all areas of suspected disability. So that's appropriate for that child. If you're deemed eligible, you're qualified to go on an individualized education program, or an IEP. And that lays out the supports and services to meet the child's disability-related needs. And that is an annual kind of review of a plan, and then every 3 years, the district has the right to evaluate the student to see if they still qualify. But there's a structure and a process there. Once it's determined that your student is deemed eligible for special education and they are put on an individualized education program, the team will determine where that student will receive those services. For some students, it would be in the regular ed classroom, maybe with a pullout. For some things, special education. For other students, they might be in a very separate program because they have intense needs. And for some students, it might be a separate school due to the nature of their disability. It's always, what's the least restrictive environment? And that is with general education or typical peers. So the student can learn from other students and other children. But some students need to be separated due to their disability-related needs. And I'm thinking of a lot of students who are deaf or hard of hearing. Their least restrictive environment may be a school for the deaf, so they can learn appropriate language before they're brought back to a different school environment. So the least restrictive environment, the LRE, for them might be that separate school. It's an individual decision based on the child's needs. One right that we have here, and the principle of IDEA, is that we do this together. Parents and students have the legal right to participate in the decision making. A parent is a member of the IEP team, and at age 14, the student is invited to their IEP meeting and are part of that decision making. And I think this is where that power of parent advocacy, and you'll see how I flesh this out a little bit, but that's so important. It's such a great principle in the law that recognizes parents and students as part of this process. And then we have procedural safeguards, and that's all of the things that have available to families if they disagree. And you have the right to disagree, and then you can pursue things. And I'm going to cover a little bit of this in the next couple of slides so you can just see what some of those basic rights are. So that I think you can also feel empowered when you are being part of the process and knowing you have these core rights to ask questions. I think it's not disrespectful, it's you need more information, especially if you're the decision maker and signing the IEP, you may need more information. So here's a parent role in the process as you're getting going. I hope that every parent here realizes that you are the expert on your child. You go into that IEP meeting, there's 11 people on the other side of the table. It's a little intimidating. They might all have initials after their name, but you are the expert on your child. And you will carry that information from year to year, from team meeting to team meeting. You are the holder of that information. You can share your child's strengths and some of the challenges that they face. And that's why you are an equal member of that team. That's why you're part of that decision-making from that principle of IDEA. You're essential. They can't hold the meeting without you. So you are a member of that team. You can also invite other individuals to that team meeting. They could have knowledge of your child, and that can contribute to the conversation. You have the right to bring others. And we also suggest that you never go in alone, that at least you bring a friend as a note taker. I think that helps you stay on track, provides that emotional support, and there's another ear in the room. So that's one recommendation from the Federation, that you never go in alone. You bring someone. You can have the right to share your concerns and vision for your child. It's built right into the IEP form. Parent concerns, student concerns. It's right there. That should be in your language. These are your concerns. You should not have it paraphrased. And if you need it to be translated, you can have it translated. But those concerns are important, and they should be addressed by the IEP team. Also, the vision for your child. Like, where do you see your child in the future? We're hoping to work with students for them to develop their own vision and participate in this conversation. But once again, you're the expert on your child, and you should be there to lead those discussions and set high expectations. I think that's really my goal in all of this is let's set high expectations for our kids, and then we'll work to meet that. Ultimately, you will be given consent to any programs and services that your child. You sign the IEP, you sign the placement forms, but it should be informed. You should know what this means. You also have the right to withdraw that consent if for some reason something's not working out. And that would trigger another meeting to figure out why isn't this working and how can we make that better. So you have the right to give consent, especially to the initial evaluation of your child, but then at any time a program you felt is not working or a service is not working, you have the right to withdraw consent and meet with the team again to come up with a new pathway, a new program. The other thing I think is important for parents is once you sign the IEP and the kid goes off to school, it doesn't stop there. You really should be monitoring progress. You should be making sure that you're getting enough information and data. Parents have the right to a progress report on IEP goals every time there is a regular report card, but you can ask for additional progress information. Some families ask for weekly logs because their child is nonverbal and cannot communicate with them. Whatever you need, that's going to help you monitor your students' progress and stay on top of things. I always am concerned when I hear a family has waited a whole year to find out that things weren't working. We're all feeling. So you need to monitor progress, and if you need more information, talk to your educators. I think that's the piece that we have found at the Federation is that the family engagement research says, and it's really simple, when schools and families work together, kids have better outcomes. And in fact, educators have better outcomes. They like their jobs better because they're engaged with the process. You know, most educators, my mom was a teacher, they go to school because they love to teach children. And we should be working with them so that it all works better for all kids. The school district also has a role in this process. And I have things the school districts must, and this is where I love the law. When you must do something, you must do it. And so you have to hold them accountable. So school districts, when you're starting this process and working with families, you must notify the parents of the meeting early enough to make sure that they can attend. It has to be at the convenience of the family. What I think is really exciting from COVID is that we learned we can maybe do some of these things virtually, and families may not have to take the whole day off to attend an IEP meeting. They can run out to their car, and, at work, and participate on their phone in the IEP meeting. It's just as effective, and we should meet families where they are and meet their needs. Scheduling that meeting at a mutual convenient time, an agreed time and place. And families can request maybe in person or virtual. And I hope your school district is, creating that flexibility to meet families' needs. Because the concept is, we're going back to that IDEA principle of parents being involved in the decision making. They have to be there. They also have to share the purpose of the meeting. There's a meeting notice and who will be attending. And so you will have notice in advance of what the meeting is about and who's going to be there. If you want to bring someone, we suggest you let the school district know so they can be added to the notice. It's kind of the two sides. They're telling you who's going to be there, and you're saying, and I'm bringing so-and-so. It's just, I think, kind of courteous to both sides. If you do not speak English as your first language, you have the right to have not only all of the materials translated for you, but an interpreter at the meeting. We want families to be able to understand and effectively communicate with the team. And even if you think your English is kind of strong, this is a technical area. And so I suggest that you ask in advance for the interpreter to be there. And the district can make those arrangements. How important it is to hear the information in a language that you trust and you have full capacity in as you're learning English, so that you can really communicate and be informed of the conversation. I think it's hard to get all of the materials translated in a timely fashion, and I think that's where some give and take might be, is that it might take an extra day or so. All of this, what I didn't put on all of these slides is the strict timelines that are driving this process that the school district has to adhere to. And I think that's where families can be a little bit flexible if they need another day to get you the materials. But you can ask for those materials in advance. I think it's 2 days before the meeting. You have to formally check off some box, but ask for the reports, ask for the evaluations, so you can review them prior to the meeting. So you're going into that meeting with the same base of knowledge as all of the educators in the room, and you can have a better conversation. There can be an IEP team member that is excused from the meeting, but only with your consent. And that, I think, is depending on what the purpose of the meeting is, the structure, but there is a legal makeup of the IEP team of who has to be in the room. And what you're doing, though, is pulling lots of educators away from their primary job, which is teaching. So if an educator doesn't have to be there or could send in information that's acceptable to you, you can consent for them not to be at the meeting. And then we get to the last thing under that IDEA thing is all those procedural safeguards. And what it's doing is giving you the right as the parent to disagree with the school's decisions. So first of all, you're supposed to get a complete explanation of the procedural safeguards. It's a notice of parents' rights. Don't quote me on that. I forget what the title is all the time, but it's a multiple page document, single space type, really tight, of all of your procedural safeguards under the law. Anytime the school district chooses to act one way or another, you have the right to a prior written notice, it's called. So in fact, that if the you have a meeting and they've decided your child is not eligible, or for some reason they are not acting what you are asking for, they have to document the reasons why and send you that notice. And that's a procedural safeguard, because now you have in writing what the school's position is, and you know what that ruling is. Often they said, they might say no, but you don't really know why. So you're going to ask for notice, documentation of why they are disagreeing with you in any decision. The school district now will conduct the evaluation of your child. You may disagree with that. And so you have the right to an independent educational evaluation. There's lots of rules around this of who pays for it and when it happens and, all of this. And I'm not going into all those little details, but just to let you know that you can disagree with the evaluation of the district. I disagreed with one for my older son. We got an independent evaluation, and we let the experts come to the table and talk about their perspectives so that they could influence the ultimate decision makers. And it's hard as a parent to do that. I think you need that independent evaluation. You also have the right to review all of the students' educational records. And this is kind of hard to do. Sometimes you have to go to the central office and they have to pull out files, and you have to, especially if English is challenging to you, to access all this information. But you do have that right. So we also recommend that families keep their own files. We have a class in it, the Federation, is organizing all of those files and how to put together information so that you're saving that paper trail. I used to also save documentation of my son's work along the way so that I could demonstrate where they were at in different grades. So if you disagree, I think the first thing to do is always to reach back to the school and say, can we have another meeting? Can we work it out? Maybe I miscommunicated or didn't hear things, to try to work it out locally. That's really the fastest way. And often they're going to meet with you to say, hey, where did we just, not come in alignment? Why aren't you signing the IEP? Why aren't you agreeing to this? And you might be able to solve the problem there. But you can also ask for kind of an independent person to help facilitate that, and that's mediation. The district doesn't have to agree to go to mediation, but often they will, because now somebody who's a neutral party comes in, reviews materials, hears two sides of the story, and tries to bring the parties together. I've been to mediation, and I think the mediators in our state do a very good job. And they also have a workshop, so that they will do a workshop for your district so that you can understand that whole process. And then ultimately, if you disagree, you have the right to file a legal complaint. It's the a due process hearing in front of the Board of Special Education Appeals. That is kind of a higher level of kind of legal challenge to the school district's position. And at that point, we suggest that you might get some legal help to kind of enter that, because it is a legal process with evidence and testimony. And it's really beyond a lot of our parent level of expertise. And then you can ultimately appeal that BSEA decision in state or federal court. Often when families file for a hearing, there's a whole legal process that happens there, but there's a resolution meeting, and that's when your attorney and the school district attorney, prior to going into the courtroom, kind of work it out. And that's where we see a lot of kind of deals cut, because it's just a more definite way of resolving that versus relying on a judge. So the school districts may be motivated to come to the table at that resolution hearing. So I've just kind of gone through a very quick analysis of the process of getting into special education, understanding your rights and roles, understanding what the school district has to do. Yes, there are some safeguards. All of these have little nuances and timelines and deadlines. And that's where organizations like mine can help you through. And I just wanted to give that basic kind of understanding so that you have the power to go into that meeting and advocate for your child, because you are the expert on your child. I think the second piece that I felt as a parent, kind of hitting that wall and having to work with the school district and saying, this isn't working so well, why are we doing it this way, is to think about systems advocacy. And I found out that we here in Massachusetts have the, I think, a wonderful opportunity to be the advisors, to give feedback to our school systems. In our law, it's not in every law in the states, only 7 states have a law that requires a special education parent advisory council. And it should be made up of families of students who are being served by the public school. It really is providing that direct input, the feedback system, and they can be involved, not only advising, but participating in some type of, often choosing a new program or reviewing a policy. That expertise, once again, is coming to the table. You as parents are in the system. You set, as a CPAC, you set your own bylaws and operation procedures. I provide assistance to all of the CPACs in the state. You all operate really differently. I read a lot of bylaws. I have so much fun. But it's really nice to see how everyone perceives their role and want to move forward. And I think this is where we want to change the mindset in school districts, is to recognize that diverse experience and how valuable it is when you're making decisions. Once you kind of set up a CPAC, I think the goal is to move beyond just having a meeting once a month or having a speaker or running an activity. It's really helping the school district value your role as an advisor, because you are parents and you're meeting parents in different activities on the soccer field, at dance class and scouts, in the supermarket. You can do that outreach. You can let families know that there is an organization, a CPAC, that is really there to help provide that support, access to resources, but also be a sounding board for issues that you're coming up individually. And now the CPAC can sift them and say, wow, we're hearing a lot about this issue. I think it's rising up to maybe we bring it forward to our administration. Because it's all about collaborative problem solving, okay? None of us have any extra money. It's how do we do with what we have to make it work better? And that system change is based on real input from students, through their families, community members, others that are working in the system. I think the CPAC can also be that real trusted source of information. You'll see here that one of the duties is to meet regularly with the school administration, whether it be the special ed administrator or coming forward and meeting with the superintendent or others, school committee. You're bringing information and you're bringing things forward that can be addressed at whatever level. And it's also the quickest way to get things done is if you bring it to the person who has the power to make that decision. I also think the CPAC can be that flow of information sharing. Something happens, someone's out, we're gonna have to, figure out how to provide services, but there might be several weeks before services aren't happening. That information can filter down through parents to the CPAC, and often the CPAC has different ways of communicating with members. Not every family follows all of the information from school, but they might see somebody and be able to have that information communicated and saying, yes, they know about that, they're coming up with a plan, there's going to be a meeting, on this issue in 2 weeks, on this night, I'm going, if you can't, I'll give you the information. It's just that kind of way of sharing information parent to parent, because we're all about improved services and programs. Let's make this work. And if it's not working, let's figure that out. And the earlier we figure it out, the faster it's fixed. I think the goal and family engagement research and our state framework starts with I think there are 5 principles or guiding essential elements, but the first one is trusted relationships. I think if you have a trusting relationship, those are the people you're going to listen to. And so by working together, by CPACs working with families, the CPAC working with the district, you're going to build that trust and you're going to move it forward. And when things get difficult, you rely back on that trust. You rely back on that relationship and say, okay, we did this last time. We're going to do it again. So who can be a CPAC member? Our law is pretty specific and also general. So the school committee establishes a CPAC, and membership is offered to all parents of children with disabilities who are being served by the district. So that means IEP plans and also 504, which are students who have a disability but don't require specially designed instruction. So it should be all of those families. I always say to my CPACs, reach a little deeper in your community. Maybe there are some families that are being served through early intervention. Their child isn't 3 yet. Bring them in. You're going to be on your pathway. Move them forward. Students that may not be identified. We have parents who volunteer to be surrogate parents of children in foster care or in state custody. And the Federation, we actually recruit and train those families. They should be part of that table. They're surrogate parents, foster parents. Bring in as many people as possible to get that rich discussion. And then our law says, and other interested parties. So I think that's me, everyone. I'm always interested. Make it as inclusive as possible. I think parents should still be the leaders of that group and kind of decide the agenda and their activities. But I think this is a nice way of saying, let's make sure that everyone, and I think my recommendations to CPACs is to also look for the diversity in your community. So if you have a large Spanish-speaking population in your community and there's nobody in your CPAC small membership that speaks Spanish, you're not meeting them, you're not reaching them. So you have to make those, cultural connections to make sure that they feel welcome and you're getting that input. Same as all the different disability types. I can give you the statistics on your district. And if you have a large population of students with autism and you have no one representing that disability on your CPAC, you're going to have to go out and find those families because you need that voice. So the richer your group is, the richer the feedback is and the experience level that you can bring to your district. So here's Massachusetts law. And this is what I do every night. I read the law. The CPAC has 3 specific duties. We have a very strong law in Massachusetts. And I shared the presentation with the leaders of this panel, so we can share this out. You have really 3 key duties. And you can do other things, but you're an advisor to the school committee on matters that pertain not only to the education of students with disabilities, but their safety. And this became really very clear when we went through COVID and the special unique needs of kids with special medical health care needs in COVID and why CPAC advice and input was really important. You're also supposed to meet regularly with school officials. That builds that relationship and allows information to flow up and down. This is the hardest one to kind of effectuate, is participate in the planning, evaluation, and development of special ed programs. And so this is where I think a little conversation has to happen between the parent leaders as to what opportunity is there to do this. And I have a slide on each one of these sections just so we can talk about it a little bit more. If you've never been involved in a group, there's lots of help out there. I love the Serving on Groups curriculum. It's available online in English and Spanish. Very family friendly, but helps you understand what it's like to be in a group. And that's okay. We're all starting different places. But the advising role of the CPAC goes beyond just complaining. It really shouldn't be just like we're finding this wrong. It's finding out what some of the issues are in the district, providing maybe some background, some that different perspective, raising the pros and cons in any decision so that they see that maybe this will have a different impact on different communities, and asking appropriate questions, getting more information out on the table. I think that helps the decision makers because they might have really focused in and not really had that consideration. Often the CPAC develops a liaison between the school committee and the CPAC so that that exchange of information happens. Not many families can attend those long school committee meetings, several hours on a school night. This was the key. The most successful CPACs tell me is that when you meet regularly with someone, you build a relationship. You get to know them, you get to know their perspective, you kind of get to have a sense of their role and their kind of way of doing things. It just makes, when things get difficult, you fall back on that relationship. I always recommend that CPACs join any other parent leader groups, communicate with the PTO, where can you partner with them? There's so much opportunity to do this together. And so it also might help some families who feel uncomfortable self-identifying as a parent of a child with disability. But if there's a group that's PTO and CPAC and LPAC all meeting together, they don't have to identify as anything other than parent. So that's a nice way of just kind of making sure that you're in the loop of all the information in the district. And this was the participating one. And so in planning and development, if you know the district is looking at a new program or thinking about changing the structure or maybe moving a program from one school to another, that's where you can help maybe sending out a survey, gathering information, making recommendations, helping to be part of the background and the information. It's when you are going to make a decision. Whenever data is collected, it's always skewed with the person who delivers the data and said, we found X and whatever. I think they should have multiple people delivering information on data to really analyze it more fully. And you'll get, I think if you involve families, you'll get better data results. I think more people understand the importance of how many surveys do we get all the time? And they just go through. And if someone said, no, that's really important that you complete it. So there's that partnership. There's that working together. The other thing I think CPACs can do and do for our district is be part of that continuous monitoring process. You adopt something, you move forward, and often we just are too busy and we don't stop and say, did it have the impact that we thought it was going to have? Is this really working? Let's look at it again. I can't tell you how many times our CPAC reminded our district, can we, just stop for a moment and see, was that effective? Is that really doing what we thought it was going to do? Remind us that it's beyond the decision making, it's the constant monitoring of whether this is working. And it's okay to realize you made a bad decision and you figure that out earlier. So here, this is a phrase that I remember from our U.S. Secretary of Education came to one of the Federation's conferences and said, Michael Uden said, parents are change agents. I went, oh, that's really cool. And then I found a research synopsis from 2020 that said the same thing. Parents are change agents. You are the ones that can make change in systems. You're going to do it on an individual level for your child or a student that you're working with. So you're taking that action on behalf to advocate for that child, for best outcomes for that child. But I hope that you take that other step and step up and advocate for all children. Help the system work better for all kids. And you can, as you're doing that, you will get the most benefit. When I joined the CPAC, I met a group of families who were on the same journey as I was. When I was down, they lifted me up. They carried me along. They gave me great advice. They provided resources. And together, we felt a wonderful sense of accomplishment. We faced a lot of barriers along the way, but it was, I think, together that I felt I was a better individual advocate because I was better prepared to go into those meetings. I had more information. I felt more empowered. And that's going back to that family engagement research. When we do it together, students have better outcomes. So, just a little bit about my organization. We provide all of that support to you as a CPAC, as a special education parent advisory council. I do trainings. I have a networking group. I share information all the time. We're just there to help you navigate and do this. Because not all of us studied how to be a parent leader in school. It's something we learn. My mom was involved in the PTA, so we got dragged to all those meetings. I felt I got it through osmosis. But I am that phone call, that quick phone call, whenever you have an issue and you need some help. And I will even drive out to Holyoke. The other thing I think is to know that our organization is the federally funded, cross your fingers, Parent Training and Information Center. So we're that free phone call for both educators, professionals, and families. You can call us every day. And there was a time in my life I made a call every day because I just felt like I needed more information, or I just couldn't get over something and I had to talk to somebody about it. So we can offer you resources, training, on just that one-on-one consult to kind of walk you through. The other thing is we have programs that match you parent to parent, so two families of kids with autism can connect. Or maybe your child has a rare genetic disorder and nobody in the United States has that same disorder. Well, we know people in England that do. We make those connections. It's all about connections. And educators, we rolled out a whole new IEP form. It was hard for everyone. And so we've been trying to learn together how this all works. And it's not perfect yet, folks. We're still figuring this all out. But we're working with educators and getting their feedback and pushing that, forward into our State Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. Every time you ask me a question, I learn something. And I'm able to share it with another family. So don't be shy about calling us. And we have staff that speak Spanish, Portuguese, Haitian Creole, Vietnamese, Chinese, both Mandarin and Cantonese, Russian, and we have connections to other communities. We also have a phone line so that if you identify with a language that we don't have in-house, we can call a third party in to have a phone conversation with you. So that's a little bit about the Federation, and I'm encouraging you to advocate for your child and advocate for better systems. Thank you. Happy to answer questions.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you have questions for Leslie, we can certainly ask them. But we'll use the microphones in the room just so that the video that's being recorded can take that. So Mark can share, and I'll stand here.
I have the answers too.
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions off the top of their head? Lynn?
I do.
We need the microphone though.
Yeah, sorry, it's buried here.
Oh, she's got one.
I do have. So, again, being very experienced with disability, and also in my own life, but also in my advocacy for many years. But I didn't say I also am a teacher, and I'm the daughter of a teacher and the niece of a teacher, and as Leslie and I were discussing earlier, when you have those kind of professional genetics in your family, they have a huge influence. So too much preamble to my question, but what I guess I'm asking mostly, and this is wonderful information, I know a lot about aspects of children with special needs, but not as much within the school system, as in public school system, though I was also an advocate nationally against No Child Left Behind. My experience now is going in and out and providing programs from what I do as a visual artist as well with them, but not as much now. So my question to you, and being someone who is 68 years old as well, growing up, the issue I'm concerned about, how do you address the stigma with what comes in this day and age with what comes with special education and children disabilities?
So disability disclosure is a big one. I think it's a personal and family decision. The way that I approached it as a family member is my older son is dyslexic, so he has a hidden disability. Everyone knew he couldn't read. Everyone on his soccer team knew he couldn't follow the directions when the coach went, blah, 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 go this way, that way, and whatever. And he was like, he just needed someone to visually do that, and he could follow those directions. So even though you had a disability, I said, we are going to be out. You're just different. You learn different. You have different skill set. Difference is your superpower, in a sense. We tried to normalize it. Also, I felt an obligation for him to self-identify as a young person with a disability because there were others who couldn't hide that disability. And it just leveled the playing field with people with disabilities, because those who may have a physical disability or a different type of disability, if you're blind, people know. And people should know what his disability was. So I think that's number one. I also think we need to find our people and encourage our young people to connect to others with disabilities, because we always talk about the power of parent-to-parent sharing. I think student-to-student sharing is really important. So the Federation now, we have a youth advisory council that advises our programming. They run a monthly Connect Youth virtual type of thing. We are now engaging them in our conferences, and we have a youth strand. Just helping them make connections to resources and to others in the community. So it's a family decision and a family choice, but and I know for some cultures it's difficult to talk about your child's disability because the family may not accept it. Even within a family, we have people challenged. I don't have one answer. I have an answer that worked for me and my family. I think the more we talk about disability and the more kids realize that I learn different, they can be more open about it. I know when you go to college, you don't have to identify when you're applying, but if you want reasonable accommodations, you have to self-identify. So ultimately, to get accommodations, legally entitled accommodations in the workplace, in college, in other environments, you have to identify, have to disclose. And it's a skill that I think we need to teach our students. When it's appropriate, how much you disclose, but they have the legal right to accommodations. And it's that balance there. That's a really great question. I think we're dealing with it, trying to deal with it. There's a wonderful resource called the 411 on disability disclosure that we work with young people in high school with. A wonderful curriculum on that that's written by self-advocates so that they have a learning pathway to find out what works for them.
And that mostly answers my question, because I firmly believe, and that's been my experience, even as I try to open minds of able-bodied adults. It's education.
It's education.
And experience. And
there's
if we do keep hiding it, then we're giving mixed signals, which can be a real problem. But the only other thing I would ask, so how about what sort of sensitivity trainings or things which I see a big lack in, for instance, in government. My husband worked for government for a state in Maryland and then for the feds fortunately, right before our latest administration. when he retired for 45 years, and I was asking him, but I already knew the answer. I know you've gotten much in terms of trainings for things for sexual harassment, LGBTQ training in terms of discrimination there, and of course he's nodding yes, and racism, etc. How many times have you had training in your 45 years on this purely on
So I've been
disabled
involved in the
people?
community a lot.
And she
So I
said,
get a
he
lot of
said
training
no.
almost every day. But I love this question because it's a way that we can work together as schools, families, and community groups to maybe bring in a speaker, to maybe have additional forums,
teachers
to look for that, how do we make this inclusive? I think anytime you are involved in a group that's planning an activity, number one is it accessible? Do we have activities for kids who might be highly sensory challenged, and we need to have that quiet space in that quiet room? Why aren't we just thinking that way? And I think we purposely have to do that. I think schools are doing a better job of educating all educators as to different ways of learning. Universal Design for Learning, UDL, is a popular topic for learning for educators. There's also curriculum for students. The Newton, it's now a separate nonprofit, but it's called Understanding Our Differences, and it's curriculum around helping students learn. And a lot of CPACs I know use components of that. In my district, we worked with, when we brought all of our K-3 schools together to that intermediate school, as part of the guidance department, we worked on understanding differences as part of their curriculum, and parents volunteered to help deliver that curriculum. So we worked together to help students recognize that even though a friend of theirs might have a challenge in one area, they might have a strength in another, and to realize how, well, that's why it's great that we work in teams, because we bring different skill sets to the table. So there is curriculum out there for students, for educators, and for community. I just think we have to have more conversation about that, yeah. And that's why I'm really excited about you guys starting this type of conversation. This is the beginning of a conversation of how can Holyoke be a more inclusive and place where we all want to raise our kids and they can find jobs and homes and places to live here. And that I think is our goal as a community.
You mentioned the CPACs were also open to other interested parties. I'm very curious. I'm a member of the Holyoke Teachers Association, and we're very interested in advocacy on behalf of our students, and I didn't know if that included us.
It does. And although I advocate for parents to be the leaders, because often CPACs adopt a structure where there's a couple co-chairs and other people have roles in it, and they were saying, well, it has to be a parent of child with disability. And so I had a young man call me up and say, I really want to be that other interested party in my CPAC, and I want to be the chair. I have a sibling with a disability. I've lived this my whole life. I'm single. I have no children, but I'm interested, and I have the time and the capacity to do all that work. So I said, well, you're going to have to go in front of them and ask them to amend their bylaws so that you can run as a chair, which they did, and you can amend bylaws at any time. And so they created an opportunity for this other interested party to become involved in their group and to be part of that. I think as educators, it's difficult to sit on one side of the table and criticize the system that you're in. You know, that I think is difficult. And I don't want to put people in an uncomfortable position. But when there's opportunities to collaborate and engage, yes.
I'm a member organizer of a teachers union. I criticize my system all the time.
Right. And you have that vehicle. See, I think we're trying to provide that vehicle for families to let the system know things that are working well. I think that's the other role that I think CPACs could do, is highlight things that are working well, because then the system will continue to fund it and and move it forward, hopefully, because, hey, this is working well. But then highlight things that are not, and how can we work to improve it. An example is our extended school year. It was a mess. We got notified very late. We couldn't make plans. We didn't know what would happen. There was just really poor communication. And so it didn't seem to me like it's supposed to be an extension of the school year. We have a legal mandate to meet the disability-related needs of these students, and we weren't we were treating it like a rec camp. So we brought that forward to our school committee, and we were really well-versed. We had a, good presentation, and they said, well, we're going to form a committee. And I just rolled my eyes, and I said, oh, no, this is going to take forever. Well, that committee really worked hard, and we put educators on it, administrators, parents, and we had students come and talk to us. And we started to see the different perspectives. And we advocated for earlier identification of dates and places, and when it would start and stop, and the hours. So our kids could then do other things. We couldn't even make family vacations because we didn't know when that would happen. Then we found out through the community that our town ran a nature discovery camp, and our kids could never go. And when we told the town about it, because they were in extended school year, they said, well, we'll just put one the first week in August, and we'll just, advertise and make it inclusive, let's figure that out. Our swim lessons, we had a little lake, and we have town swim lessons. They're at 9:30 in the morning. My kid's in extended school year, can't learn how to swim. Talk to the town. They said, how's 4:30? I'll get someone to teach at 4:30. Turned out 4:30 was the popular time for working families, because they could pick up their kids, scoot over to the beach, drop them down. They're sitting in a chair going, oh, the end of a long day. My kid's in swim lessons, and, pick up pizza on the way home. It was the most popular swim time. We changed our whole way of offering swim lessons that met all families' needs by speaking up and asking questions and offering solutions and ideas. And I think that's where I'm really jazzed about this work, is like, let's come forward and talk about different ideas. So just one issue now made us have a really great relationship with our town rec department. And a lot of our high school and college students who came back as swim instructors all of a sudden started to become buddies and do other programming with us. So it just built on itself. And all it took was, okay, I'm coming forward and saying this isn't working, and not kind of coming from a negative standpoint of saying, how can we do this better? My mom was part of the PTA, and when you think of PTA or PTO, it stands for parent-teacher. And that often doesn't happen when they're coming together to address concerns in the community. And I think that's a really untapped potential. So you're an interested party. You just might see me there too.
I have a question on the child find. How aggressive are school systems supposed to go after and find children who may need those supports?
So there's no definition in the law. I think some districts do it better than others. Some might have more resources than others. We know that different districts have different resources in our state. I think they have to do it with a robust attitude, so that the earlier we find issues and address issues with students, the better outcomes you have. That's been clinically proven with autism. The earlier you get to kids and get them the services that they need, they have better outcomes. I think we all, as community members, need to have that information, so you share it. make sure it's posted in multiple languages. Make sure it's posted where people are. And that could be in churches, that could be in food pantries, it could be in libraries. I was out in the western state, part of the state, in a regional school district, saying, well, you could post it here in the supermarket. And they're like, we don't have that. We don't have that. We don't have that. I said, so where do you guys hang out? Where do you meet people? At the dump. I said, so you're going to post it at the dump. Got to figure out where your people are, okay? And just make that happen. And I think the more we can stand up and identify as, I'm an individual with a disability, I have a child with a disability, I'm disability friendly, you're now having people come to you and ask you those questions. So nothing in the law, but this is the spirit of the law. And the spirit of the law is we should find those children and we should get them appropriately evaluated. That's their right. And if they qualify, they're eligible for services, either early intervention services or school-based services. Yeah. These are all good questions.
I have to put this delicately. How do we begin to engage in the kind of advocacy? How can parents engage in the kind of advocacy that would have budgetary implications? Budgetary implications.
Everything has budgetary implications almost. Yeah.
Major
I think it's
budgetary implications.
I think it's difficult for volunteer parent leaders who are trying to organize and everything to also have that higher level of expertise in budgets. So when I asked for the budget and the school district didn't want to share the information with me, they did. They brought out a binder that was like 7 inches tall and said, here's the district budget. And, I'm not an accountant. It was difficult to navigate. So finding someone, I think, within your community that might have that monetary expertise, an accountant or somebody in a fiscal kind of oversight, is a good person to bring on board, maybe even another interested party, to follow the conversation, to know that, frankly, most of the budget in public schools goes to salaries and benefits, and I think it's less than 15% are on other, and that other could mean, paper and the lights on, and, it's really driven by staffing. And we are seeing challenges everywhere in the change. The ARPA funds provided a lot of extra money to school districts, and now they're not seeing those. So tight budgets, rising costs in healthcare costs for educators. I mean, it's difficult. So I don't think the CPAC has a specific charge under the law to advise the district on special education. But that could go towards staffing and, legally appropriate staffing. It can go to services. It can go to lots of conversations around appropriate environments and where is it cost effective to bring students into schools and create programming, or maybe work with the collaboratives to create different kinds of programming. I just think that many parent volunteers may not have that expertise. And it might take a year or two, or somebody who's really interested in that. That's the other thing I think CPACs can do, is to make sure that the group that you're bringing together should be a positive force for change. I mean, nobody wants to go to a very negative environment and do things. And if somebody has a specific interest or an expertise or wants to work, to identify some financial challenges or opportunities, let them go. Form a subcommittee, do that. Whatever that is. We had a parent who wanted to celebrate the wonderful work that people did in the system to support kids with disabilities. So we had a Wind Beneath Your Wings program, and you could nominate the bus driver, the lunch lady, the educator, the service provider, a neighbor, anyone who was making a difference in that child's life. And we had a ceremony, and we invited everyone, all town, officials, all the people from the religious community, all of the leaders of all of the organizations, and we had a lovely event where we recognized helpers. We recognized people who just went above and beyond. We got a lot of bounce out of that because it was a very positive, upbeat, and people realized what it took, all of the community, to raise up that child. Was it a lot of work? Yeah. But we kind of took somebody's dream and made it happen. So there may not be anybody who is really wants to go, yeah, I want to spend hours and hours going through the budget to find stuff. Could they advocate for appropriate services and educators? Yes. I think what I do is I counsel CPACs not to take political positions and endorse a candidate for school committee, say, but could they provide a forum to have candidates come forward and talk about their perspective on issues? Yes. So now everyone is more informed and can make that individual decision. So I think it's trying to find that place where more information comes forward so everybody can make better decisions. And I think lots of groups in the community can do that. CPAC is one of them.
I'm sorry. Could I add one thing? If your intention is, for instance, as a teacher, to find out you think you need more in your budget, in your department for your kids in a city, my city being Holyoke, then one of the best ways you can find something, it's not glamorous and it takes some time, but when we first went for our budget, whether we go for the state-sanctioned one or whether we went for the fiscal year, as we did with our Mayor Garcia, we still had to justify the items that we were putting in his budget. So I had to go to the city council meetings, and they happen in the spring because our fiscal year, as you may know, starts in July and into June. And I went and sat there and watched all the city councilors go through all those items one by one. And it's not a glamorous thing to do, but it gave me some insight, and also in terms of our government in the budget, who supported the school systems, who supported what, and what they didn't support as well.
There are some new tools also. So I do a data workshop for parent leaders to teach them, and the new DESE has the Radar, R-A-D-A-R, tool where you can take your school financing and budget and compare it to similar districts and see how can't say that word, districts that are similar to yours in terms of size and structure, your city. So you wouldn't compare yourself to a small community, but other cities. And you can compare and see what other communities, how they're supporting the schools and the student per pupil expenditures, salaries, all of that. What are they paying their paras? So a lot of this stuff is a lot more transparent. You just need to find it and look for it. So we do a data workshop to teach parents how to find some of that data, how to use some of that data, and just expose them to data, because I don't think they realize that school districts speak data. And if they don't speak data, they're not going to be at the table in the conversation. But it's a learning curve.
I have a follow-up question for you, and it's more about the law in terms of the CPAC and the LPACs. It's my understanding that these organizations are required, and what we've talked a lot about has been proactive engagement with our parent community. Parents may not know what they don't know, in terms of being able to be an advocate in this capacity, or that there's help to help them get up to speed on how to be that advocate in their own language even. What is the responsibility of the district to ensure that they are making meaningful outreach to get the CPAC up and running and the LPACs up and running?
So once again, there's the law, and then there's the spirit of the law. So they are required by law to establish and have these groups. And in their review by the State Department of Education, if they don't have them, then they have to have corrective action plans to find them. There's that mindset shift. If school districts did the shift saying, we see family and parent input as valuable to our community, if we see that important to our decision making, then they would ensure that the word gets out, that there's robust support, that they allow the CPAC, especially because they can't get access to the names of all the kids, the families, because of confidentiality. They rely on the school district to send out information and notice, to translate it appropriately and get it out. So there has to be that working relationship. I think it's when school districts say, this is a plus for our system, then they will support it and work towards establishing it. Is it more work? Yes. Are you building those relationships? Yes. Will kids have better outcomes? Yes. And I think that's the difference. We worked on the IEP improvement project, and I won't name the district, but they changed their IEP process as part of this, adopting the new IEP form. They said, what's the process that's not working? And so what they did is, when a family who didn't speak English was going to come to an IEP meeting, they invited them in early, maybe a day early or early in the day, and they introduced them to the interpreter. And the interpreter and the family made contact, got to know each other, et cetera. And then they brought the family into the room and showed you, this is where the meeting's going to take place. They're taking away some of that anxiety around the whole process for this family. And then they brought the people in one at a time and introduced them. And then they put place cards, like they made their own little folded things with the names of everybody in front of it, so that the family wanted to ask a question, they could address the person appropriately. They just made it family friendly. Did it take more time? Yes. Okay. They saw a marked drop in the number of rejected IEPs. Every time a family didn't sign an IEP within those 30 days, it's legally rejected. And they have to go through a whole process and do paperwork and go back to the family and have another meeting and do all of this extra work. And they did it at the front end. And they built a relationship. And the family had a better experience. And they understood the process. They made connections of who to go to for questions. And they got signed IEPs. So changing the process, doing the front work, adopting a mindset of we're going to do it differently to benefit everyone, it had a better outcome. So financially, it paid off. And that was mind-blowing to me. They had actual data that said, oh my gosh, we did this in 6 months and we just see a market change. And so they just said, what else can we do? What else is out there? And that's where families could come forward and give them ideas.
Any other questions? No?
Thank you
All right,
very
well,
much for
thank you.
having
Thank
this
you so
conversation.
much, Leslie, I appreciate it. Thanks, everybody, for coming. I really appreciate you coming on a cold night and asking your questions and being part of this conversation. We hope to have more, so thank you. Thank you.